Thank you. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So begins the Bible, page 1, in the beginning. Imagine, for thousands of years, humans have been staring at their feet, gazing up at the clouds, and wondering, why anything? Why does anything exist at all? Was there always something? Surely not. They must have thought there must have been a time before, a time out of time. And we know now that before the Big Bang, there wasn't anything here. There was no here, what to speak of. There was matter, but not in any meaningful form. It wasn't organized yet into things or places. There was only potential, hovering. The Bible goes on. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. I find that so beautiful, so poetic. And then, 13.8 billion years ago, came the flash. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, I agree. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and he called the darkness night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. There was nothing, and then there was something. That's accurate. More than something. There was light. And there's nothing about that account that I can argue with, except God. Luckily, we can do that here. Forgive us, O Lord, our orneriness. Of course, I especially argue with the gendered God, but that we can chalk up to translation. No more. I'm skeptical of God, the divine tinkerer, the decider, the creator, that will put this here, no, maybe some of that, who made night and day on purpose, and why not some third option beyond our imagining? That would be rad. But I think again of early humans watching the sky brighten at dawn, watching the light fade again at dusk faithfully, and wondering why this happens at all. Why this? Why does this happen over and over again at this same faithful pace? Has the sun always risen? Has it always been this way before there were people? Or do the mornings just spool back and back and back through time, endlessly, unthinkably far? If not, what set this in motion? When was the first morning broken? In one Tunguskic myth from Siberia, in the beginning, there was only a vast body of water. You can see that this is a theme. Then the god Buga set fire to it, and as the fire consumed the water, land was created. Then Buga separated the light from the darkness. We can't say that there was a first morning, as it were. As material floating around our sun began to coalesce into kind of a rocky clump that would become our planet, if there was a sky, it was probably pretty dusty for some time. But we can say that there didn't used to be mornings. And then there were. Who among you saw the eclipse back in August? Pretty much most of us. Wow. I found myself at the moment of totality, unexpectedly, in tears. In tears. As this chalice reminds me that I am connected to everyone who's worshipped before, in the presence of the flame. Suddenly, at the moment of totality, I felt connected to humans thousands of years in the past, who surely felt something like I did. And I understood at once that old legend, which had seemed so silly to me before. It happened around the year 600 BC when supposedly, at the moment of a total eclipse, two armies set down their weapons and refused to fight again. Suddenly, I got it. And then, in the mountains of Oregon, watching, the moment the light returned, I was overcome with this feeling of strange, indescribable relief. Which is weird, because I'd had a heads up. You know, unlike the armies in 600 BC, I know how eclipses work. It's 2017. I have the internet. There's diagrams. And I appreciate a good diagram to explain mystery, but I had never experienced anything bigger, more all-encompassing, more powerful, and some ancient part of me felt the chill in the air as darkness descended, and despite my internet connection, still felt frightened, and then rejoiced at the return of light. It's that primal feeling of awe that makes me feel connected to those early humans who would gaze up at the clouds and wonder. Then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And by the way, those italics aren't really for emphasis, but I appreciate a good Bible verse read with the "and it was good." It feels more affirmative. A parallel tradition, almost, in Aboriginal Australian myths, the earth was once a vast, nondescript expanse of mud and clay. Then ancestral beings, you can imagine what happened next, shaped it into plants and hills and rivers. Next come the humans. Many accounts of creation attend to the creation of something out of nothing, how anything got here. But these myths attend to the shaping, the forming of matter into things, order, patterns, reproductions. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth," and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed was in itself according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. Those of us who are familiar with grass and trees, this should come as no surprise to us. But it doesn't necessarily follow that each living thing should contain within it some means of recreating itself. Evolution explains to us how, but I think again of those early humans wondering, how does this work? When I was a child, I used to sit under the maple trees in my backyard and pull apart the Samaras, the helicopters that come down. And inside some of them, I would find a seed, but also, if you've done this, you know, a tiny little leaf, an impossibly small leaf curled up alongside the seed, ready to break free as soon as the seed took root. This was the new tree, held tight. It was like, it seemed, each tree contained smaller trees, which in them, smaller than sight, must also contain further trees. And I just saw trees all the way down. And then I would think my way backward through the parent trees until I was dizzy. This common form of wondering is not incompatible with science. I'm reminded of Walt Whitman's poem, When I Heard the Learned Astronomer. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures, were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and the diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I, sitting, heard the astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out I wandered off by myself in the mystical, moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. And at no point does Whitman say, the astronomer's wrong, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I hasten to add that the rising anti-intellectualism, anti-science in this country breaks my heart. It is discouraging. But the point is, even the science-minded among us must sometimes pause to appreciate the mystery that we study, and we do owe it careful study. When liberal religion is occupied fending off the regressive anti-science claims of religious fundamentalism, it's easy to lose sight of the beauty and mystery of stories like Genesis. Literal interpretations of Genesis, word for word, absolute truth, those interpretations are used to justify dehumanizing ideologies about the gender binary, about women being made subservient to men, humans being born into sin, and all manner of nonsense being chalked up to God's will. And these literal interpretations of Genesis are an affront to what we know of science, as well as what we know of the Bible, which is largely metaphorical and should be interpreted in the beauty of its stories. Now, in earlier days, I was known to become lodged in intractable arguments about the clear impossibility of creating a universe in 7 days, particularly when the Earth was not yet spinning, and the spinning of the Earth mathematically determines what a day even is, but whatever. And for that methodical caution, we rob ourselves from being able to enter a mindset of appreciation, wonder, and connection. Never mind the inconsistency, writes UU scholar John Burens. The first chapter of Genesis is not a treatise in natural history, newsflash. It is, he writes, a poetic prologue to sacred history, not natural history, in the form of a hymn, a liturgical poem exalting God, or the God of your understanding, the divine, that which has created all, exalting that force for creating order from primal chaos, from the mud, the clay, the vast expanse. Burens goes on to write that people who want the biblical account of creation given equal time in public classrooms have a distorted view of both science and the Bible. And I would argue that when we questioners and skeptics and devout arguers like myself, when we want the biblical account of creation given no time in religion, for its inconsistencies, inaccuracies, for its inability to be reconciled with science, we also have a distorted view of what the Bible is supposed to be doing. Burens writes, for the Bible, as for ancient myths in the Near East in general, creation was not this one-time event. He says it was a never-ending process, linked always to recreation, to the maple seed. Creation myths did not serve to fill intellectual gaps, he writes, to answer questions about where things came from. And we often reduce these creation myths, more often than not the Aboriginal ones, to, oh, look at these quaint stories that people made up because they did not know any better. Rather, Burens writes, they had a more immediate, vital function. They celebrated the divine, bringing order out of primal chaos, but they did not assume the chaos went away. Quite the contrary. The potential for disorder and chaos, both in nature's rhythms and in human society, remained close at hand. Chanting or reciting the creation myths played an important role in evoking how the tenuous order in which humans live might be sustained and renewed. The God who is praised as creator, Burens writes, is one who recreates as well, upholding and reinforcing the rhythms, patterns, structures, and creativity that makes life possible in the first place. I think often of the DNA spiral, endlessly folding, unfolding, refolding, the endless process of pulling apart and bringing back together again. mixing, recreating, life never ending, ever creative. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures. Let birds fly above the earth." He created great sea creatures, in some translation, the whales specifically, which touches my heart, and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." So came life. Once there was no life, and then we know there was. There was. So came life and evolution, ecological diversity, and then us. Welcome. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it." Got some issues with that. That's another sermon. "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food." Thus did God establish snacks on Sunday. And on the seventh day, God ended his work, which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all that he had done. He dropped off the muffins. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Here we are, come into the fullness of this moment to sit together in the mystery, as people of reason and science, and also not incompatibly of hope and awe, perhaps more so for our dedication to understanding, our dedication to witness creation and bask in its grace. So creation need not play to an empty house. Amen. Amen.